Can a soul curse another soul? Does another person have spiritual power over you? By David Russo. What if someone wished something terrible upon you, not merely in a passing moment of anger, but with a genuine belief that their thoughts, words, intentions, or spiritual energy could somehow follow you? Across history, people have feared curses, hexes, the evil eye, psychic attacks, negative energy, and other invisible forms of spiritual harm. Some believe these forces can affect health, relationships, money, luck, or even destiny. Others dismiss them as superstition. Psychology introduces another possibility. Perhaps believing that we have been cursed can change what we notice, what we expect, how we behave, and how we interpret ordinary misfortune. But beneath all of these possibilities lies an even deeper question. If the soul is truly the deepest part of who we are, perhaps even something eternal, can another soul actually curse it? Or does the greatest power of a curse begin when we believe another person has spiritual power over us? Introduction. The ancient fear of being cursed. Human beings have feared invisible forces for thousands of years. Across cultures and historical periods, people have developed beliefs about curses, protective symbols, prayers, rituals, blessings, amulets, sacred objects, evil eyes, spirits, ancestors, and unseen influences. The details vary dramatically, but the underlying concern is remarkably familiar. Can another person's hatred, jealousy, anger, words, or intention somehow reach beyond ordinary interaction and affect our lives? When something goes wrong unexpectedly, especially after conflict with another person, it can be tempting to connect the two. A run of bad luck may begin to feel like more than coincidence. A frightening statement may echo in the mind long after it was spoken. And uncertainty can create a space where supernatural explanations become especially powerful. This audiobook will not begin by assuming that curses are either unquestionably real or unquestionably impossible. Instead, we will explore the question from several directions. We will examine spiritual traditions, psychology, expectation, fear, suggestion, coincidence, negative intention, karma, emotional influence, and the nature of the soul itself. Some claims about supernatural curses cannot be scientifically established, but the human experiences surrounding them, fear, belief, expectation, hostility, anxiety, and the search for meaning are very real. And perhaps investigating curses eventually leads us somewhere unexpected. Instead of asking only whether another person can spiritually harm us, we may discover a more important question. How much authority over our inner world are we willing to give another person? Chapter 1. What exactly is a curse? The word curse can describe many different things. Sometimes it means nothing more than angry words spoken during an argument. Someone saying that they hope another person fails or suffers. In other situations, a curse refers to a deliberate ritual intended to produce misfortune. Different cultures have traditions involving hexes, the evil eye, spells, harmful intentions, spirits, or supernatural punishment. Even in everyday conversation, people sometimes describe a family, sports team, house, object, or period of bad luck as cursed. We use the same word for experiences that may have completely different explanations. That raises an important question that is often overlooked. If a curse supposedly works, what exactly is being cursed? Is the person's physical body being affected? their circumstances, their relationships, their emotions, their mind, their future? Or is something happening directly to the soul? Those are very different claims. A person's words can clearly affect another person's emotions. Threatening behavior can affect someone's decisions. Manipulation can change relationships. But claiming that one soul can directly alter another person's destiny through supernatural intention requires a much larger assumption. Perhaps separating these possibilities is the first step toward understanding the subject. We do not have to deny someone's frightening experience in order to examine alternative explanations for it. Something can feel spiritually threatening while still involving psychological, emotional, social, or coincidental factors. And if we are specifically asking whether a soul can curse another soul, we first need to decide what we believe a soul actually is. If the soul is merely another word for the psychological self, perhaps it can certainly be wounded. But if the soul is something deeper, an enduring spiritual essence, then the question becomes much more mysterious. Chapter 2. Why humanity has believed in curses. Beliefs about curses are ancient because uncertainty is ancient. Imagine living in a world before modern medicine, meteorology, microbiology, psychology, or scientific explanations for many natural events. A person becomes mysteriously ill, crops fail, an infant becomes sick. Someone experiences several tragedies close together. Without an obvious explanation, people naturally search for patterns and causes. If an enemy had recently threatened a family, the connection might have seemed obvious. The invisible became one possible explanation for the unexplained. Yet, it would be too simple to assume that every spiritual tradition involving curses developed only because people lacked scientific knowledge. Human beings also experience jealousy, hostility, resentment, betrayal, revenge, intimidation, and fear. We know that people sometimes deliberately try to hurt one another. The question is whether that harmful intention can operate beyond ordinary behavior. Different traditions have answered that question differently. Some developed rituals intended to protect people from spiritual attack. Others emphasized prayer, purification, blessings, forgiveness, or trust in a higher power. The fact that beliefs about curses appear in many places is fascinating, but widespread belief by itself does not prove that supernatural curses exist. Human beings across cultures also share similar psychological tendencies. We look for causes, we notice patterns, we fear uncertainty, we remember extraordinary coincidences, and when something frightening happens, we want an explanation. Perhaps the history of curses therefore tells us two stories simultaneously, one about humanity's spiritual imagination and another about humanity's deep desire to understand why bad things happen. Chapter 3. Can thoughts and intentions affect another person? Thoughts clearly affect the person thinking them. If you repeatedly think about anger, your emotional state can change. If you constantly imagine failure, your willingness to take risks may change. If you focus on possibilities, you may begin noticing opportunities you previously ignored. Thoughts can influence attention, emotion, decisions, behavior, and eventually circumstances. But can your thoughts travel outward and directly affect another person without ordinary communication or action? That is a very different question. Spiritual traditions sometimes describe intention as possessing a force or energy capable of reaching beyond the individual. Scientific evidence has not established that a person's hostile thoughts can independently cause supernatural harm to another person. Yet intention certainly can travel through ordinary channels. Someone who resents you may speak differently to you, spread rumors, undermine opportunities, behave aggressively, manipulate others, or create tension whenever you are together. What appears to be negative energy may sometimes involve subtle but very real social signals. This distinction matters because it changes what we fear. Someone else's hatred may affect their behavior toward us, but that does not automatically mean their thoughts control our destiny. We can take practical action against harassment, manipulation, threats, or harmful behavior. The invisible claim is harder to establish. Perhaps another person's negative thoughts reveal more about the condition of their own inner world than the future of ours. Their intention belongs first to them. The question is whether we allow it to become something we continuously carry. Chapter 4. The nocebo effect. When belief becomes the curse. Medicine has demonstrated something remarkable about expectation. Many people know about the placebo effect, in which positive expectations can sometimes influence how symptoms are experienced. Less commonly discussed is the nocebo effect, where negative expectations can contribute to unpleasant symptoms or experiences. This does not mean that every illness is imaginary or that thoughts magically create every physical condition. It means that expectation can become one factor influencing human experience. Now imagine someone tells you with complete seriousness something terrible is going to happen to you. Perhaps you initially laugh, but later that evening you remember the statement. The next morning you feel slightly unusual and wonder whether it has started. Your car makes a strange noise. You receive an unexpected bill. Someone doesn't return your call. Events you normally would have considered annoying but ordinary suddenly acquire a new meaning. Is this the curse? The prediction has begun reorganizing your attention. In that situation, the person's words have produced a genuine effect without requiring any supernatural mechanism. Fear changes what you notice. Expectation changes interpretation. Stress can affect sleep, concentration, and behavior. Those changes can create additional problems, which then appear to confirm the original belief. A frightening possibility becomes a feedback loop. Perhaps this is one reason curses can feel so convincing. Once the idea enters the mind, almost anything can become evidence for it. Hello, this is David Russo. When I was a kid at camp, there was a roped-off area that we were told nobody should go into because if you did, you would be cursed by the Jersey Devil. I remember being close to that roped-off area when somebody pushed me into it as a joke. I remember it like it was yesterday. I got up and dusted myself off, and I'm sure part of me wondered what was going to happen. But time passed. Nothing happened. The curse never came. And looking back on it now, it makes me wonder, how much power does a curse really have if we don't give it power through our fear? Chapter 5. Fear gives the curse somewhere to live. Fear has an unusual relationship with attention. Tell yourself not to think about something frightening, and you may immediately begin thinking about it. If you become afraid that a particular event will occur, your mind may start scanning the environment for signs of it. This vigilance can feel protective because you believe you are preparing yourself. But constant scanning can also make the feared possibility seem increasingly present. Suppose someone believes another person has cursed their finances. Every unexpected expense now becomes significant. If they lose $20, the curse seems responsible. If their car needs repairs, the curse appears stronger. If they have a slow month at work, another piece of evidence has arrived. Yet, during the same period, positive financial events may receive far less attention. The person is not necessarily being irrational intentionally. Their attention has simply been trained toward one interpretation. This creates an important possibility. Perhaps fear can become the place where a curse appears to gain its greatest strength. That does not prove or disprove every spiritual belief about curses. It simply recognizes something we can observe about the human mind. When we repeatedly give something our attention, it can become psychologically larger. Someone else's hostile intention may have originated outside of us, but we do not necessarily have to build a permanent home for it within us. Chapter 6. Coincidence, Patterns, and Confirmation Bias. Human beings are extraordinary pattern detectors. This ability has helped us survive, learn, predict, invent, and understand the world. We notice that dark clouds often precede rain. We recognize faces. We connect causes with effects. But our pattern detecting ability can also find relationships where none necessarily exist. Two events occurring near each other in time can feel connected even when they are independent. Imagine being told on Monday that you have been cursed. Tuesday, you drop your phone. Wednesday, someone cancels plans with you. Thursday, you feel sick. Friday, your washing machine breaks. Without the curse story, these events might simply be an unpleasant week. With the curse story, they become 5 pieces of evidence. The mind has been given a narrative capable of connecting unrelated events. Confirmation bias can strengthen that narrative. Once we believe something, we naturally notice evidence that supports it more readily than evidence that challenges it. If 10 good things and 3 bad things happen, the 3 bad things may dominate our attention because they fit the curse hypothesis. Recognizing this tendency does not mean dismissing every unusual experience. It means becoming careful about the conclusions we draw. Sometimes a pattern is meaningful. Sometimes it is coincidence. Wisdom may involve remaining curious without allowing fear to decide the answer before the evidence does. Chapter 7. Karma is not necessarily a curse. Karma is frequently discussed as though it were a supernatural revenge system. Someone hurts another person and people say, karma will get them. In popular conversation, karma can sound like an invisible judge waiting to punish wrongdoing. But traditional understandings of karma in religions and philosophies that developed the concept can be considerably more complex, often involving action, intention, consequence, causation, and patterns extending beyond the simplistic idea of cosmic revenge. This distinction becomes important when discussing curses. If someone wishes harm upon another person, we might imagine that the universe will automatically send that harm back. But this can turn spirituality into another version of retaliation. Instead of personally taking revenge, we begin waiting for the universe to do it for us. That expectation can keep us psychologically attached to the very person we claim to have released. Perhaps karma can be considered in a more immediate way without making supernatural claims. Hatred shapes the person who repeatedly practices hatred. Deception shapes relationships. Cruel behavior creates consequences. Compassion also creates consequences. Every repeated action helps construct habits, relationships, reputations, and character. In that sense, what someone sends into the world often affects the world they themselves inhabit. Maybe the person trying to poison another person's inner world should first consider what that poison is doing inside their own. Chapter 8. Can negative energy attach itself to you? People often describe entering a room and immediately sensing tension. Sometimes nobody has said anything, yet something feels wrong. We may call this negative energy. There are ordinary explanations for at least some of these experiences. Human beings constantly read facial expressions, body posture, tone of voice, silence, distance, eye contact, and countless other social signals. We can detect hostility or discomfort before consciously identifying exactly what we noticed. Spiritual traditions sometimes interpret similar experiences differently, describing energetic fields, psychic attacks, spiritual attachments, or negative entities. These ideas belong to particularly spiritual and metaphysical frameworks and should not be presented as scientifically established facts. For people who believe in them, practices such as prayer, meditation, cleansing rituals, visualization, or sacred objects may provide reassurance or spiritual meaning. From another perspective, those same practices may help someone calm the nervous system, focus attention, establish boundaries, and feel psychologically grounded. Perhaps we do not always have to force every experience into a single explanation. Someone may describe an encounter spiritually while another person describes it psychologically. What matters practically is whether the interpretation makes us stronger and clearer or increasingly frightened and dependent. If a belief convinces us that invisible forces are everywhere and that we are powerless against them, fear may become more damaging than whatever originally concerned us. A useful spiritual practice should ideally help us become more grounded, not less. Chapter 9. If the soul is eternal, what could actually harm it? Now we reach the central contradiction hidden inside the idea of a soul curse. Many spiritual traditions describe the soul as something extraordinary, resilient, perhaps eternal, perhaps connected to the divine, perhaps continuing beyond physical death. Yet we sometimes speak about the same soul as though another person's angry thought could permanently damage it. Can both ideas comfortably exist together? A human life can certainly be hurt. Bodies can be injured. Hearts can be broken. Relationships can end. Money can disappear. Reputations can suffer. People can experience trauma, grief, betrayal, illness, and loss. None of this should be minimized by saying that the soul is untouched. Human suffering matters, but if the soul represents something deeper than circumstances, perhaps suffering and spiritual destruction are not necessarily the same thing. Imagine the soul as an ocean and life's experiences as weather occurring above it. Storms can be powerful, waves can become enormous, the surface can become violent and chaotic. Yet beneath the storm, there may remain depths that the weather never reaches. Perhaps spiritual development involves discovering those depths. Another person might disturb the surface of our life, but that does not necessarily mean they have reached the deepest level of who we are. Chapter 10. Taking your power back. If you genuinely believe someone has cursed you, simply being told, "Don't believe it," may not immediately remove the fear. Fear rarely disappears because someone orders it to leave. A more grounded approach is to examine what is actually happening. What evidence do you have? Which events have clear, ordinary explanations? Has the fear changed your behavior? Are you repeatedly searching for signs? Are there practical problems requiring practical solutions? Taking your power back does not require proving every metaphysical question. You can strengthen boundaries with hostile people. You can address financial problems directly. You can seek appropriate professional help for physical or emotional concerns. You can pray if prayer is meaningful to you. Meditate if meditation helps you, or engage in spiritual practices that leave you calmer and more grounded. The important distinction is between a practice that strengthens you and a fear that convinces you that someone else owns your future. Perhaps the deepest act of reclaiming power is refusing to organize your life around another person's hatred. If someone wants you to fail, your attention does not have to remain fixed upon them. If someone says something frightening, their words do not automatically become prophecy. You can acknowledge what happened without making it the center of your identity. The person who wishes badly for you may control their own intention. They do not automatically control what you do next. Chapter 11. Can love be stronger than a curse? If curses represent the desire to send harm outward, love represents almost the opposite movement. Love wishes another person well. Compassion attempts to understand suffering. Forgiveness seeks freedom from endless resentment. This does not mean tolerating abuse or abandoning boundaries. You can distance yourself from someone and still refuse to hate them. Sometimes love for yourself requires walking away. Many spiritual traditions place extraordinary emphasis on responding to hostility without becoming consumed by hostility ourselves. There may be practical wisdom in this. If someone hates you and you spend every day hating them in return, the relationship continues inside your mind even when the person is nowhere near you. Their hostility has successfully recruited you into reproducing the same emotional state. Perhaps love is stronger than a curse, not because love functions like a magical shield, but because love refuses the invitation to become hatred. Someone sends anger. You do not have to become anger. Someone wishes you failure. You continue building your life. Someone attempts to make you afraid. You return to peace. The victory is not necessarily defeating another soul in some invisible spiritual battle. The victory may be preventing their darkness from deciding who you become. Chapter 12. The soul that cannot be cursed. Imagine for a moment that the soul really is eternal. Imagine that beneath your name, occupation, positions, successes, failures, fears, memories, and physical identity exists something deeper. Call it soul, spirit, consciousness, awareness, or simply the deepest self. If such a dimension exists, perhaps it cannot be owned by another person's opinion of you. Perhaps hatred can be directed toward you without becoming part of you. This creates a very different relationship with the idea of curses. Instead of constantly asking, how do I protect myself from what someone else is sending, we might occasionally ask, why am I assuming that they possess authority over my soul? Protection may still have spiritual meaning for someone, but it does not have to come from panic. Prayer can arise from peace rather than terror. Boundaries can arise from self-respect rather than obsession. Spiritual strength does not have to mean constantly preparing for spiritual warfare. Maybe the soul cannot be cursed in the way fear imagines because the soul was never another person's possession to begin with. Someone may dislike you. They may misunderstand you. They may speak badly about you. They may even sincerely wish for your failure. Those things can hurt, and practical harm should always be taken seriously. But another person's hatred does not automatically become your spiritual destiny. Perhaps the deepest freedom arrives when you realize what another soul sends toward you does not have to become what your soul carries forward. Conclusion: who has authority over your soul? So, can a soul curse another soul? Humanity has wrestled with variations of that question for centuries, and different traditions provide very different answers. Some spiritual systems accept the possibility of curses or harmful supernatural influence. Others emphasize divine protection, karma, prayer, or the spiritual resilience of the individual. Psychology demonstrates that fear, suggestion, expectation, stress, and confirmation bias can powerfully influence human experience. What science has not established is that one person's soul can supernaturally take control of another person's soul or destiny simply through hostile intention. But perhaps our journey has uncovered a question even more important than whether curses exist. Who has authority over your soul? If someone tells you that they have cursed you and you spend the next year interpreting every difficulty through their words, those words have gained tremendous psychological influence. If instead you examine circumstances carefully, solve the problems you can solve, maintain healthy boundaries, remain spiritually grounded, and refuse to surrender your identity to fear, something changes. You no longer need another person's intention to determine your direction. Perhaps spiritual freedom is not winning an invisible battle against every negative force that might exist. Perhaps it is reaching a place within yourself where another person's hatred does not become your hatred, their fear does not become your fear, and their protection does not become your destiny. Someone else can choose what they think about you. They can choose what they say about you. They can even choose what they wish for you. But if the soul truly represents the deepest part of who you are, perhaps your soul was never theirs to curse in the first place.